I'm not sure if anybody can see me. I'm a kind of a doofus when it comes to video stuff. I'm not sure how if I'm being watched or not here. I'm seeing some folks come on here, but I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. If there's some way of letting me know, that would be great. You can hear me. Okay. Audrey, thank you. Thank you. Should I just go ahead and start then? Okay, I'll go ahead and begin then. My name is Gail Green. I've been a dog trainer working with behavior and that sort of thing for about 58 years. And I'm currently accompanied by a little Jackawawa named Frolic, who is sleeping. Where can I find her here? She's in her, oh, there she is. She's in her bed, sound asleep, so she probably won't be joining us. My presentation today is about disaster preparation, response, and recovery. This is for individuals. It's not for setting up a site during a disaster or volunteering. This is just basically for pet owners that can be passed along to our clients and to our communities to help them out. We here in Forest Grove have a very good disaster response group with constant classes and that sort of thing with the fire department. So you can also arrange to have your own presentation with your own fire departments and that kind of thing, and see if you can incorporate disaster response for people with the disaster response for pets. I'll tell you, first of all, one of the things that somebody sent me just a little blip on my screen the other day, and it said, disaster warning. In the event of a disaster, put some hot dogs in your pockets and the search dogs will find you first. So keep that in mind. I have been involved in working with disaster response for pets for many years. I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there are constant earthquakes, and we had a huge firestorm at one point. We haven't had any hurricanes or tornadoes yet, so I'm hoping that won't happen anytime soon. I've been training dogs and people for about 58 years. I'm the founder of the Therapy Pets Incorporated Animal Assisted Therapy Program in the Bay Area. I've done a lot of individual rescue work. Member of the Berkeley, California Humane Commission. I was a trainer at the SPCA in San Francisco and other Bay Area shelters. I was privileged to work with Jean Donaldson on her charter class for the Academy of Dog Trainers. That was quite a grind. We were working full-time at the time that we were doing the classes as well. I'm the co-founder of the first dog park in the United States, and I authored a book called Dog Parking It, and did consulting with cities and counties who wanted to put dog parks in, just about how to make them safe and fun, and what rules did we want to have, and that sort of thing. So after I did some consulting with that, I did go around California and visited 237 established dog parks and reviewed them all and put them in the book that I just mentioned, Dog Parking It. I've done volunteer management for the Oakland firestorm that we had in '91. I did the entire volunteer management group, and I did some volunteering for the 1989 earthquake. And then the one that I got the most from was going to down to Hurricane Katrina, doing testing and behavior modification plans for dogs that were abandoned, and we were trying to get adopted out to the homes that would be appropriate for them. When I went down to Hurricane Katrina, and I'll be mentioning that one a lot, that one's pretty impressive. I waited. I didn't go. I was not a first responder. I went down there for at about 5 months after the hurricane happened. I figured volunteers would be burning out, getting tired, and they probably needed some fresh meat. So I flew down there, and I was down there for about 8 days. Went into New Orleans for the first 2 days. They had a volunteer run adoption festival for the dogs that had not been claimed. And I did behavior counseling for new owners there. In 2 days in New Orleans, we adopted out 200 dogs, and we adopted out 40 cats. So we had some interesting stuff go on with that. A lot of very, very shy dogs, a lot of traumatic situations that we had to deal with. Many dogs in that area are kept basically in the backyard. No collars, no tags, no brushing, no nothing, just left pretty much on their own. And so we had to deal with a lot of dogs that were very traumatized with this incredible activity that all of a sudden fell on them. So we did a lot of just sitting with dogs and waiting for them to feel comfortable with us and do some socializing with them and that sort of thing. One of the things I did get to witness during the adoption program was a woman that was coming to look for another dog. She had a dog that she lost in the hurricane, and she'd been looking feverishly for 5 months for that dog. It was a little Sheltie. And at one point during the adoption time, we heard a scream across the compound. So a bunch of us ran over to see what was going on. The woman found her dog. It was in the adoption area, getting ready to be adopted, and they had all of us. None of us had dry eyes in the place, I have to say. So seeing a reunion after seeing all the destruction was really helpful for us to kind of keep going and keep working. Some of the things that we saw were pretty horrific. Even 5 months after the hurricane, there was one place where there was 2 dogs that were deceased that were hanging in trees. Probably the hardest one for me, And the one that made me work hardest was one that had tried to escape the house through the air conditioner area and got stuck. And 5 months later, there wasn't much left of that. But it was very, very motivating to help the ones that we could help. This presentation is covering not only loose animals, like if your animal is out, or situations where you'll be taking the dog or cat or bird with you. As you probably know, Hurricane Katrina sparked a whole lot of litigation about the way the animals were treated. People were expected to just leave their animals and get on the buses to get out of the area. One young man with his German Shepherd was sitting outside of one of the buses with his dog, and he was weeping. And a guy went up to him and said, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And he said, "I can't take the dog on the bus." So he was instructed to just let go of the leash, get on the bus, and go. And this gentleman that had talked to him was a reporter, and the reporter went to the bus driver and said, "Where are you guys ending up?" And he followed with the boy's dog in his car. He followed the bus so that the boy did not have to give up his dog. And there was a lot of controversy about the way the loose animals were treated. There are stories about, particularly one that I remember is a woman that was blind and had a guide dog, and she was told she couldn't bring it with her, but she loaded it in the boat. And they threw it out of the boat, and she jumped. What did she do? She jumped in the water, got the dog again. They helped her back in the boat. They put the dog out of the boat, and they shot the dog. And those are a lot of the kinds of stories that I heard when I arrived there, that there had been some real poor judgment in a lot of ways. So now you can take a dog into a shelter with you. You have to have proof of vaccines and that kind of thing. But the law now says, it's federal law, that you can take the animal into the shelter with you, unless, of course, it's unsafe. When you are planning your kit for your pets, there are a lot of different bits of equipment that you're going to want to take with you. Some of it is just, kind of the basic stuff that you probably know already, taking extra leash, a collar, tags, harness, food, a water bowl. I've got one of those collapsible ones, and I wish I had invented those. Wipes, comb, treats, pickup bags, hand sanitizers, tweezers, first aid, flashlight. If your dog is accustomed to boots on their feet, I always tell people that it's a good idea to get them accustomed to that, because if you're in a disaster area, there's often a lot of debris, and it's not terribly safe for them to be walking directly on it. Scissors. I take mentholatum whenever I go into a disaster area. If there is decomposition or sewage or whatever, if you put a little bit of mentholatum right below your nostrils, it will quell the any kind of stench or smell. I have two. I'm going to show you a few things that I've got here. I have for Frolic, I have a collar. It is a lighted collar. So if I can do this with one hand here. Okay, it has her phone number and her name on it. And she wears this out, and there's 3 different levels that you can go to, just the regular as well. And I've just found this invaluable to have that, even just going out at night with her. So that's something to look into. Now, what I'm going to do is, I know I'm reading stuff off kind of quickly, but what I want to do is I'm going to put a packet list together for you. So don't feel like you have to write all this stuff down. I will have you at some point either go through the organization here, or I can give you my direct email and get one to you. My dog likes a sweater. She gets cold very easily, so I always have one or two kinds of sweaters for her. A toy. We don't think about taking a toy someplace with our animals. First of all, we don't often think we're going to be gone that long. But I always take a toy, and not a squeaky toy, because if you're in a shelter, you're going to get booted out if your dog is a constant squeaker. There is no time that's too early to get your things ready. I have a backpack that I have for Frolic. It has all her stuff in it. And I have she's a small dog, so I have a small collapsible crate. And being disabled, I have a scooter that I use for mobility. And I have the crate constantly sitting on the floor of the scooter so that if something comes up, and let me tell you, disasters happen fast, then I can just throw her in the crate and go. And I also, one of the things I like to carry with me on my scooter, I don't have a car, so, and that's, I can't know if you can see it, but it's a blanket. Just a small blanket that you get at Christmas time, and they're pretty inexpensive, and because I know that she gets cold very easily. Oops, sorry, I'm not doing this very well. Okay. So looking at what your dog is comfortable with and what's practical for you to take with you. And as I said, I don't drive, so I don't have a car, and I don't have a place to put that stuff. So I have everything on the scooter. Of course, I don't have anything for myself on the scooter, but oh well. I usually have people, or recommend to people, that they do a special business card that has, on one side of the card, it has a photograph of your pet. On the other side, it has your information, your cell number, your vet cell number, and a cell number for somebody out of the area, someone that's not being affected or likely to be affected by the disaster. So that, I mean, if at Hurricane Katrina, we could have returned so many animals to their owners if we had had a way to get in touch with them. The phones were all down in the Katrina area, and so nobody's phones were working. But if we'd had another phone number on there out of the area, we would have been able to reunite many more dogs than we had. But again, that also means you have to have a collar and tag on. Frolic's collar and tag are on her 24/7. I know there are some people who aren't comfortable having collars and tags on their dogs, but I won't go without it. I've seen too much. And so on hers, I do have my number, I have her vet's number, and I have a family member who's outside of the area, so that they can contact, and we can contact each other and somehow get the dog or cat or whatever back to you. So I would do a lot of outreach in that area. So anyway, on this card, if you put those three things, then when you ask somebody, have you seen my dog? And they say, no, I haven't. And you go, okay. And they say, of course, I'll keep an eye out. Well, who are they going to contact if they see it? If they don't have your contact. So having a business card made just for this is a really good idea. What else? If you have tags from your county or city, it's a good idea to have them on there. I mean, it's a pain, but there are ways to make it so that they don't jingle or whatever the feeling is. And they will hold your animal longer at a shelter if they are licensed. So that's good to know, too. I pre-make a lost poster with a very clear picture of the dog. The more of the dog that you can cover in the picture, the better, especially if he has unusual markings. I generally do a front back side kind of deal. So it's all made out. The lost poster is all set to be copied and put up. The only thing that you will need to fill in is the where and the when of the loss. And I also would have tape or tacks to put those up. But just have one ready-made to go. You need to have a list of vaccines and due dates and medications. You'll probably be taking medications with you, but if for some reason it turns out to be a long-term absence, then you want to make sure that you are able to refill those medications somewhere. Okay. Let me go back to tags for just a second. I do a little bit of traveling here and there, and I always have my dog with me. Frolic is a service dog. So I always have not only her regular tags on, but I have an extra tag that I have made before each trip that has the notification that she is visiting the area with, again, my phone number and a friend's phone number in the area that I'm visiting. So that's just my own paranoia. I try to do everything I can to make sure that she's the number one concern for me during a disaster. I like to. Many people train their dogs to go to a place, a bed, a raised bed, or a fluffy bed, whatever. But it's a place where they go to lay when you ask them to, and they lay down and stay there. Another way that this is advantageous when you are working in a disaster setting, because you'll be working probably in a number of different areas, and if your dog is going to be with you, it's good for them to have the security of that pad there for them so that they can go put on that familiar place. I use a wash rag for my pad traveling because she doesn't need to be her whole body on the pad. She just needs to use it as a target. So that's another issue that might be helpful for you. And of course, when you're training her to go to it, don't just expect it suddenly she's going to, in a strange place, go to it. You need to practice with that, and you need to get them out and do generalizing for the use of that pad, but that's her safe spot. Whistling. If your dog gets out, now in Katrina, excuse me, I have a speech issue. In Katrina, we had lots of dogs that had just wandered away, and if you're walking through a disaster area looking for a dog, chances are they're going to be hiding someplace during the day and possibly coming out in the evening or the morning. I like to load a whistle, and I get them accustomed to that whistle by just practicing in my house. It's here's the whistle and here's the treat. Here's the whistle, here's the treat. Here's the whistle, here's the treat. Treat's got to be pretty high value. And then I go from room to room in the house and do it. And then I go out to, in our front yard and do it. And I just expand it so that wherever I am, this particular whistle, and they do have different tones to them. So be aware that you might want to keep that close to you. But you want to do a certain cadence too, something that's a little bit unusual, not just blowing the whistle. Like Morse code on the whistle or something. But it's something they can recognize as it being you. And that can actually help get them back to you. And I've heard of people using the whistle and finding that it actually saved their dog. They wouldn't have found him otherwise. Also, along those lines of sound in the area, in your neighborhood, I recommend people hang wind chimes, front door, back door, and that sound becomes home. So that when they're out, if the wind chimes haven't been part of the destruction at all, if they're still hanging, that sound can help guide them home. Because keep in mind, with a disaster, you're going to find the landscaping and the smells and everything are going to be totally different than what they normally are. And there's going to be a lot of activity. There's going to be people cleaning up. There's going to be big machines. There's going to be sirens. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. So the wind chimes can help with finding home, and that's true for dogs, cats, birds, whoever has gotten out of your environment. And somebody said to me the other day that with their cat never goes out. But we all know cats can hear really well, and they can hear that bell. And normally when they go out, dogs tend to wander, and cats tend to hide. Birds tend to keep going up. My friend lost her house in the Oakland firestorm, and the only thing that was still standing at her house was the brick fireplace and the brick porch. Everything else was gone. She had 2 cats. She had taken her dog with her that day, which she hardly ever did. But 2 cats in the household, one of which was an older cat who did pass away in the fire, but we couldn't find any indication of what happened to her other cat. So we set up a boombox on that top of the porch, even though it was just kind of standing out in the middle of nowhere. And we did an old T-shirt of hers, and we put that on the porch too, and we left for the night. And when we got back in the morning, it was a nice jazz station on the boombox, and the cat was asleep on the T-shirt. So there are ways that you can make an unfamiliar place familiar, which will be easier for them to approach. But again, keep in mind that the smells are all different in the neighborhood. Landscapes, there are no landmarks for them necessarily anymore. I don't know if you've walked through a disaster area after the disaster and seen what pictures look like of how it really was, but it's pretty amazing, the differences. So her cat did show up, and again, cats tend to hide. I wouldn't put food out for the cats because not only is your life and your animal's life put in jeopardy, but there are wild animals out that are also affected by the disaster and that could look at your pet as prey. So having food out, you don't want to draw a lot of animals to it. Birds. I had a couple of budgies, Hatch and Eddie the Peanut, and they were both in cages that were appropriate. So they learned to climb the cage, but they never really had to fly down. They could still climb down. So they never learned that if, for example, they got out and got into a tree, there was no way that they'd ever learned how to fly down. So there are advantages and disadvantages of having birds' wings clipped. It's safer in the long run, I feel, but you also eliminate a way for them to come back down to you. I mean, you could be standing 10 feet below them and they wouldn't be able to get down to you. Now, if you have a bird and your bird can talk, I taught Eddie the Peanut my phone number. He messed it up. It's hard to train him. But my number at the time was 510-215-8258. He came up with 510-215, he's too funny. The phonics in the he's too funny, which was a favorite phrase of his, the phonics in that was similar to the 8258. And that was, I could have gotten another phone number, but he really just didn't get the whole phone number. But it can work. So think about that if you've got a bird that would like to learn that. Cats often hide in warm places, car engines. They will crawl up into an engine if it's warm there. Instead of just going around kind of calling for the cat, I also tap on the hoods of cars to see if they will come down out of there. I had a cat that was an indoor cat. He got out. I looked for days for that boy. And one day I was out in the backyard with the dogs and I heard him meow. And he had been hiding in a bush in my backyard for days. And it's hard to tell, where you're going to find your animal, but don't give up the opportunity to check everywhere. Keep in mind, too, that people come into disaster areas who don't belong in the disaster areas, and sometimes they'll find your pet. What they're going to do is they may take it to the shelter near your house. They may hold on to it. And there are also Good Samaritans that stop to pick up stray animals or what have you, and they go home to their area, and they take the animal to the shelter near their area. Because it's familiar to them and they don't know where the shelters are where we are or what have you. So if you're looking for an animal that's lost, I would say in any kind of lost and found situation, I would keep my wings spread pretty wide on the area that I'm covering to find the animal. And giving up is not an option. The woman who found the Sheltie at Hurricane Katrina, there was a guy that I knew that his dog was stolen from him at one point. It was an English Bull Terrier. It was stolen. And after about 3 years, he decided, I'll just go find another dog. And he went down to the shelter near his house, and his dog was there. So you don't know. You just don't know. You got to go on with your life with it, but don't ever give up hope of finding them. And sometimes in the confusion, sometimes workers around disaster areas are trying to get the animal to come to them, and it just freaks them out even more. There was a chow chow that I worked with at Katrina that we had a mess hall, and outside the mess hall they had igloos and dogs tied on a 50-foot cord with food and water, and it was right where you walked into the mess hall, so that we didn't necessarily handle them, but they got used to having people coming and going and having some activity around them. This little girl was amazing. She I don't know how old she was, but it looked like she'd never been brushed. Probably a backyard dog. And of course, there was also a scanner for the microchip, so that was helpful for the dogs that had been microchipped. But she was 50 feet away on the line, and every time I took a step towards her from that 50-foot mark, she would start to pace back and forth, just wildly pace. So I would take a step, and she would pace, and then she would calm down, and I'd take another step, and she would pace, and she would calm down. I finally did get up to her, but it took me 2 hours to get 50 feet. And when I got up to her, I had my back to her. I had my fingers down with the treats in them. And eventually, that afternoon, she did let me walk her a little bit. But they could never break her of the fear. And unfortunately, sometimes that's what's true in any kind of rescue. So they did end up putting her down. But the compound that I stayed at was huge. Best Friends had gone into this particular sanctuary and taken over. They built a mess hall, they built an office building, they built a vet building within the first 2 days after the hurricane. And they also built an apartment so that we could test whether or not the dogs would be good indoor dogs. And they had, like a TV and stuff, and I would have rented it if I could have. It was pretty nice. You're going to get different responses from different dogs. Some are fear biters, and some are aggressive. Some are very, very submissive. There was one particular dog, a pit bull. I can't remember what his name was, but we couldn't touch him when he first came in. He was so aggressive, and we were trying to make decisions on what was going to happen with this guy. And one of the volunteers stayed with him, and ended up, I was able to sit on the ground with him. He would roll over on his back, and he was doing kisses. And don't assume Don't ever assume what you're gonna get with a little bit of TLC. Okay. Best time to look for an animal: dusk to dawn, dusk and dawn. Another thing I wanted to talk about is I try to, as much as I can, kind of imitate what some of the sounds might be out there. And I go into public places where there might be people walking around and, wanting to handle them and that kind of thing. And I had one guy running back and forth on the sidewalk to kind of get this dog accustomed to that kind of movement and aggressive movement. But I also really find it is important if an animal is used to being approached by strangers, and if the animal is used to being grabbed. If an animal is in a tough spot, they're scared, they're cornered, they try to run past you, that you may lose a chance to save that animal's life. So I'm going to reach out and grab. And I want everybody I know in the whole world to have their animals trained to be grabbed. You're not going to hurt them. It's not going to be rough. It's just going to be a grab and catch. And we want to do that without bites happening. So if an animal is accustomed to having that feeling, they're less likely to bite in response to that. Let's see, what else do I have? I told you not to give up. Everybody got that, I hope. There are times in a situation, in a situation where there's a lot of animals out, there are times when they are going to form groups. There were several in New Orleans area that were just wandering in packs. We had feeding stations out, so we would go and fill feeding stations with water and dump large bags of food right on the sidewalk. So you had to be kind of careful because they would form a group that, out of survival needs, would become very tight very fast. Unfortunately, some of the National Guard or police or whoever it was were using some of these groups at a distance for target practice, figuring that they wouldn't be able to get used to or close to the group, and that what they needed to do was just to get rid of all of them. So, and at a certain point, that may be what you have to do if the animals are being aggressive with you, and they're stressed out, and they're hungry, and they're thirsty, and they're tired, and nothing is familiar. There was one house went by, and there was a blue box, the plastic boxes that you put storage and stuff in, and we could see the box was kind of moving. It was upside down. It was kind of moving. And somebody peeked under it, and it was a Weimaraner that had gotten caught but was hiding. It's pretty amazing. There was, in the Berkeley firestorm, there was a dog that was loose, and he walked himself to his vet and showed up on their doorstep, and he was there when they got there one morning. And I just thought, I want to know who that vet is, because that had to be a heck of a vet, for the dogs to try to go there. It's humbling. The things that you see there in the South, I did not know if some of the houses were destroyed from hurricane or if it was poverty. It's important in that kind of situation, if you've got a certain demographic that you're working with, that you really need to be sensitive and respectful to these people. If they don't, if they don't put their dog on a leash and walk them every day, maybe that's just not how they learned to deal with animals. And you can't blame them for that. We can educate, and that's important, but we can't I guess assign fault to people who just maybe don't have it any other way. So, try if you can not to judge, but to educate. Don't preach, just teach. Because that's an area that we have as trainers that we can offer people without judgment, because they, in their own ways, love their animal, and that animal is important to them. So I think that's close to all that I have. It's important in training to make sure that your dog is as exposed to the world as possible. They will learn to deal with stress much better. The dog that I had previous to Frolic was had been picked up as a stray on a highway. She was very scared of people. She was better as she got older because we worked with her, but she would not have let somebody catch her if she had been found out somewhere. She would just, unless she was exhausted. And then Frolic, who's a social butterfly, she gets in people's cars without even thinking about it. She got in the UPS truck once. I heard the guy in the back of the truck, "Hi, what are you doing here?" So there is definitely an advantage of having an outgoing or tolerant animal, but even the ones that are scared and just, you don't know if they can even handle being out in the world at all, getting them accustomed to sounds and noises and movement and people who have purpose. You get people with police outfits and all jingling and walking along, and they've got all this stuff on their uniforms. It's important to get your animals used to those kinds of situations. Go to the firehouse and socialize there. Find a cop on the street and ask him if he'll just help you out with that. I think it's just important that they are able to tolerate and even seek out people at times. It may just really save their life and save your companion. So I think I'm going to wrap it up about there. First of all, first thing that you need to learn from this is don't be in a disaster. Just don't do it. Okay. All right. I'm not sure what to do from here. I'm wondering if there is somebody here who can guide me. I don't know. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And thank you all for listening to me. Let me give you my email. My email is B as in boy, G as in girl, dogs1@yahoo.com. Okay, bgdogs1@yahoo.com. So please, if you want copies of this, the lists and stuff of things with maybe some notes or whatever, that's fine. And or if you have questions that I'm not able to get from you here, go ahead and send me something, and we can do it. Oh, good. Audrey just marked down here my email. Thank you, Audrey. All right. Okay. Here we go. I mean, I'm willing to get up on the table and dance, but I'm, oh, there's Ruby. Hi. She got reported at a train station for looking dodge, but roped in a police officer. Good. Okay. I'm glad that was helpful, and there's always more to come. Don't be afraid to get involved. I did volunteer management for a few places, and that was pretty interesting too. Okay. Thank you. Any more Katrina stories? Yeah, actually there was one little dog I got really attached to. I almost brought two different dogs home. Very opposite dogs. One was a Mastiff mix. very skinny. Just obviously it just had puppies. And this was 5 months after the thing. Sometimes they didn't get to the rescue people right away. Oh, and I also had, there was 5 or 6 different rescue groups at this adoption festival, and we all got along. That was amazing. But anyway, this little guy, a little one, was probably a Shiva mix. Real smart ass dog, and he was so cute and so delinquent. Almost brought him home, but then another volunteer wanted him. So if I had brought another dog home, I would have gotten all my stuff on the porch, and it would have been that. But anyway, the watching, a lot of times when you do rescue, you don't necessarily get the follow up. But I really like to get people's information if I can, so that I can just check in and see what happened, how they did with the dog, and yeah, there was some pretty cool animals there. I almost took one with me to the hotel. Probably would have gotten kicked out. Oh well. Alrighty. I'm done. Contact me if you want to. Let me see if Frolic can show a face. There she is. She's a Jack Russell Chihuahua. Call her a Jackawawa. And she's, I think, the best dog I've ever had. I've had lots of dogs, and she's like the best one. Don't tell her I said that. Okay. I'm supposed to save this. Can somebody tell me how I'm supposed to save this? I see little hearts exploding. Those are so cool, those little hearts. Okay, if someone can instruct me on how to save this for future blackmail. I feel like I should be doing something. Dancing, singing. You don't want me to sing. If Ruby is there, or Audrey, what buttons do I see? Oh God, there's a whole bunch of them on the bottom. There's a button that says finish, but I don't know if that's going to erase it. Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay, let me see. I actually did copy that. Let's see. Save and post video, it says. But if I go out of this, there's no save and no video thing here on the screen I'm at, so I don't want to erase it by accident. Press finish. All right, and then will it tell me after that where to go?